Today on the podcast, we're with an Ohioan in South Carolina. Great career in Ohio high school, Ohio State, Big Ten champ, couple-time All-American, and a very passionate man about life and succeeding and facing challenges. Welcome today on the podcast, Scott Ryder. Hi, Scott.
Hi, thank you, Matthew.
Scott, let's tell people your running origin story. How, where, when, why you get into competitive running.
I will tell you, it's pretty simple. I was inspired by my two older brothers. And there was about 7 and 8 years between my two older brothers and myself in age. I would go to their junior high and high school track meets and just thought it was the coolest thing ever. Same with cross country, I'd watch them. And then in the summertime, oftentimes, and a lot of people don't know about this, but I would take my brother's track shoes and they ran on cinders and the spikes, I'm not kidding, they're about that long. And I would, as I'm talking as a grade schooler, I'd run around the block at nighttime. I didn't want people to see me in the daytime. I could hear that click, click of the spikes as I transitioned across somebody's driveway to the front yard. I love to run. I don't know really why, but I think my brothers were the inspiration.
Did those shoes fit you?
No, I would stuff Kleenex in the ends to make them fit me. But ultimately, I did wear those shoes, interesting, into the state high school track meet. I wore those same shoes that I used to run around the block in the summertime. So the how would be my older brothers' inspiration. I think the why would be like any kid, you're searching for things that maybe you have some success at. I was known as the fast kid, whatever that meant. I probably used that to my advantage sometimes as a kid when I shouldn't have by being a mouthy kid and I could get away from people. But I just really enjoyed it. It seemed fun and felt free.
What year was it on the calendar? What grade did you start competing?
Well, I started in 7th grade, but I will tell you, it was always just a seasonal thing. I remember in junior high being so sore the first day after practice, I could hardly walk up the stairs in school. So it was just a thing. I'd go out for track, and in junior high, I ran the hurdles, I high jumped, I did everything. I just was having fun.
You're a middle distance runner in university and later 800, kind of your specialty, but you almost made the 100-meter dash to state finals, huh?
I did. In high school, I would run, again, just about everything. I even high jumped in high school. And so I came up with this crazy idea, and my coach let me pursue it. Probably wasn't a good choice, but it all worked out. In Ohio, in my day, there were the district track meet and then the sectional track meet. And today it's known as the regional. And if you finished in the top 3, you'd go on to the state meet. So I said, Coach, I want to run the state meet in the 100-yard dash and the 880. He said, all right, if you want to do that, there's enough time between those. And daggone it, Matthew, I just missed qualifying for the state meet. I remember being at Upper Arlington High School, and one of the assistant coaches from Kansas was there for that sectional track meet. He said, you're running the 100? He just thought that was crazy. I said, yeah, it's fun. I think my fastest time in the 100 meters ever in high school was 10.8. So not blazing, but not bad for a middle distance guy.
A lot of people at the state meet at that speed, especially then. Let me get the year and what the facilities were when you went through sectionals, regional, state. Were there artificial tracks on there? What year was high school starting?
Sure. My first year in my day, I'm so old, Matthew, I competed when you had to be in high school, you had to be in 10th, 11th, or 12th. So my first year of high school track competition was 1976, and 77, and then 78 was my last year.
So there were artificial tracks.
There were. There were some of each. I won't do this, but I could show you my knee. I still have cinders in my knees to this day from some of my experiences. But yeah, during my time, I'm not that old. There were all weather tracks.
You ran everything, jumped, sprinted. How good were you in the starting blocks? Did you use them?
No, actually, I hadn't thought about that. I didn't even use the starting blocks in the 100. I wasn't good at it. I never practiced. I thought people would see me standing up. They think, what's this guy doing?
I hate to say this, but not much from the state.
No. But you know what? I think it was meant to be. It's okay that I did, especially that senior year.
How was track in your school? What was the name of the high school, and how did the sport fit into the culture? Often that's about when running was getting more accepted, more popular, but still baseball, basketball, football ruled America. How was it there?
Baseball, basketball, and football ruled Hilliard, Ohio, which is where I grew up. It's a suburb on the west side of Columbus. And I'm very middle class suburb, great place to grow up. Track was just something, for the most part, I just went out for seasonally. I didn't train a great deal in the off season. That changed a little bit in my later years, but not as much as it would be in today's environment, that's for sure. There wasn't a lot of attention or interest in track and field. If you would have come to my bedroom, even when I was in late grade school, early junior high school, I had Sebco up on my wall. I had Alberto Wantarina. I had a number of people, posters up, and I don't know how I got into that.
At Columbus, Ohio, you got a big college down the road. Did you get interest once you were winning the state meet in Ohio? Did colleges start talking to you?
They did. I won the state track meet as a sophomore, and then I lost. And that's a story in its own right. My junior year, I ran really crazy, stupid. We tied. We had the same exact time. I lost. And then my senior year, I redeemed myself. But yeah, Kansas, I mentioned earlier. I know we talked to Villanova. I say we, my coach. The thing about it, like a lot of people you talk to during my era, my parents weren't particularly dialed in on track and field, scholarships, recruiting. They were great parents. I have no regrets and no complaints. But yeah, I'd get the letters, and I used to have the letters saved. I remember the guy at Pitt was not too happy when I said, no, I'm not going to come there. A lot of Ohio schools. I wasn't a stellar student, so I don't know how many people realized that back then. That could have been a turnoff for some people.
Let's talk about those state championship meets. You winning your sophomore year, that really puts you on the map and scares a lot of people. How did that go, and how were you on the big stage, and what was your racing strategy?
I think if you used one word to describe my high school career, it would be naive and not very informed. It was just something I went out for in the springtime track. But my sophomore year, I didn't know what the state meet was. I'd never been to a state meet. So I qualified for the state meet. And in fact, my coach said, Scott, be in front of Hilliard High School Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, and we'll ride over on my motorcycle to Ohio Stadium.
Oh my gosh.
I had not even really shared with my parents what was going on. They knew I was going to a track meet like I did on most Saturdays in the spring. We got to Ohio Stadium, and I looked, there's 40,000 people. State of Ohio high school track meet's very well attended. It's a big deal in Ohio. I was suddenly a little nervousness set in. So I asked my coach if I could borrow a dime, and that certainly dates me, a dime for the payphone. I called my mom and dad, and I said, hey, I didn't realize, I think this is a big deal. No worries if you don't want to come, but I just want you to know if you want to come, I'm running in a pretty big track meet. And I also remember I picked up a rock, which I still have. And I was so nervous that day at the end of the horseshoe, the Ohio Stadium, which is where the track was then. There was a green wrought iron fence, what I'd call it. I was nervous. I was tapping that rock on the fence as we were in the kind of the bullpen. And when I finished the race, I didn't realize that I still had that rock in my hand.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
So it was just a little stone, not even smooth. And I won, and I had no race strategy. My coach didn't talk race strategy with me. I guess you'd say I just instinctual type of runner at that stage. I just wanted to win, and I was probably as surprised as anybody.
It's funny to talk about the change in times, not only equipment, notoriety, and press coverage of sports and things like that. But did you guys wear helmets on the motorcycle?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Yes.
But still, jumping on the back of a motorcycle with a high school coach, one kid, that's probably something that doesn't happen today. And there's all kind of waivers and everything else. So that's great. How was your relationship with your coach?
That was what I would describe as interesting. And like a lot of high schools, and I say this with the utmost respect, my coach was knowledgeable, but he was an all-around knowledge guy about track. He did a really good job with me, but my relationship with my coach soured my senior year. And I always perceived, and I say to this day, and I've talked to my coach since this, that he was very frustrated that I lost my junior year.
Really?
And I sensed that he felt like it was a reflection of himself. And actually, he kicked me off the cross-country team my senior year. And probably justifiably. We were supposed to have 2-a-days, and I was working a summer job, and I wanted to earn some money. I said, I can't make the morning practices for a couple weeks, but I will. He said, if you can't do that, you might as well not come back. So I didn't come back, and that was okay. But again, we've since kind of reunited, and it's a cool story.
Nice. What about that race in the junior year? Sometimes losing challenges are where we get all kind of insights. What do you remember about that race?
I agree with you that I think that race probably taught me a lesson about life in general, which sounds strange for a 65-year-old guy to say, but that lesson is carried on in my mind really since that day I was 17 years old. I remember going to one of my friends that lived down the street who was at the track meet my junior year, and I said, I'm going to break the state track meet record. I said, I'm not going to break it. I'm going to blow it out. And so I ran stupid. I took off at the end of the first lap. I was so far ahead. The crowd was going nuts. And I got on the home stretch, and it's the proverbial thing you hear from guys my age. The bear came out of the woods and jumped on my back. And I ran slower than I'd run during the regular season. And the guy from Cleveland Heights High School came screaming up beside me. And we tied. If you look at the record, we had the exact same time. I like to say he had a little bit bigger nose than myself. And deservedly, he won. And I will tell you, it sounds strange looking back, but I was pretty devastated. It was embarrassing. I was from a small town. Back in those days, they'd put your name on the sign at the entrance to the city if you won the state championship. So people knew me as Scott Ryder, the runner, and to lose that year was not good.
Yeah, wow. That's pretty intense. Yeah, we've all seen that in high school meets. It happens. I watched a lot of the national Nike and New Balance, and there were so many races that from middle school on up where someone would go at 4-minute mile pace in middle school on lap one, and it just, that poor kid.
It's interesting. I think this has evolved to a certain degree, but some people have had a great deal of success, especially in the 800 running from the front. I think of people like Johnny Gray and maybe even Joaquin Cruz, and I could go on, but probably the majority of the time, the person that leads the majority of the race doesn't win in the 800.
Yeah. State Waddle. There's a lot of famous Ohio runners who have won from the back. So you had your senior year in track and again, won the state championship. And then what were you thinking with your status as a student about what would happen next with running and education?
Sure. If I can back up for just a second, I think the beauty of my senior year for me is that the guy that beat me my junior year was back. And a really nice guy named Joel Albers from Cleveland Heights, Ohio. And he had run some really fast times. He had been invited to the Golden West meet. That was back in the day when that was quite prestigious. A friend of mine found that race on YouTube. I'll have to send it to you sometime. But I just hovered back in the middle of the pack, and then about 180 to go, I took off, and Joel and myself were really side by side. And the last little bit, I pulled ahead of him, and he actually dove. If you see the video of the race, he dove. And I was very grateful that I won and redeemed myself. And I did break the state track meet record that year, the fastest time ever run at the state of Ohio high school track meet. And I like to say my record, Matthew, was so good that it was beat the next year. So
what was the time?
It was yards, 880 yards, 152.4. So by today's standards, when kids were running 146, it'd be nothing. But back then, that was pretty respectable.
Yeah. And what was your personal connection with Ohio State? When did you get into the conversation with them?
Oh my, when I look back at that whole process, I go back to that word about my high school running naive. I didn't do any kind of due diligence, nor did my parents. And again, I don't blame my parents. They wanted me to have an education. Running was great, but I didn't study how many 800-meter runners or 1,500 meters runners they had, how successful they had been. I didn't even know where they placed in the Big Ten. But the big factor was there was a girl that I started dating in high school who was my girlfriend. Her name was Kelly. Her name is still Kelly, as a matter of fact, obviously. And I knew I didn't want to go away. I wanted to stay close because I was in love. And I'm thankful for that because today I've been married to Kelly for 44 years. So
yeah, congratulations.
Thanks. It's a blessing. But I remember Coach McDonough came to my house and they offered me a partial scholarship for tuition only because I said I was going to live at home. And looking back, if I was a negotiator, if it was all about money, I would have said, no, I need a full scholarship. I deserve that. But I didn't. And it all worked out. So Ohio State was a great fit for me. Coach McDonough, in my opinion, was the best coach I ever had out of really 4 coaches through my running career.
What made him the best?
I would say he was the best for me. I want to emphasize that. He would tailor the workouts to me specifically. It wouldn't necessarily be a one size fits all. He had confidence in me. He was never critical of me. He was encouraging. He was just a really special man, a good guy. And he later coached another guy, because 2 years behind me, Mike Anderson from Dayton, Ohio, who was an All-American in the 800 meters. So I think Coach McD, as we called him, his last name was McDonough, he kind of knew that what he was doing. Unfortunately, we lost him. He passed away as a result of cancer just a few months after my senior year.
Wow. Let's talk about the transition. How'd you decide what to study? How hard was transitioning to become a college freshman and manage the level of workouts there?
How I decided what to study, just being straight up, as I tried to find the easiest thing I possibly could. Really, I don't hide it. I knew I wanted to have a college degree. My father had a college degree. Only one in his family of 9 kids that did. And my brothers had a college degree. My oldest brother had his PhD. So I understood the importance of education. But my main effort in college was trying to remain eligible to run track. And by my junior year, I finally caught on to studies at Ohio State. I was a good student after my 2 first years.
Yeah.
So I chose the path of least resistance, you might say.
Different schools have systems, but it was 12 credits and a 2.0.
Yeah, I think it was the same thing at Ohio State.
Yeah. So we did have a few people that were always sweating it out.
Sure.
As the report cards came up. So what about the workouts? How like you said in high school, sore trying to go up the steps after your first day. How did it change in Ohio State?
Obviously, they were more intense and a little more time on the road. I'd really never run much out on the road. I just ran on the track. But I loved the workouts. The workouts were like competition to me. So if we were doing 3 400s and 2 200s, whatever, I wouldn't try to be, I'd be the first guy across the line every time. Or if we ran at a specific time for each one, I would always do my best to be right on pace. I didn't find the workouts unattainable, or they were challenging for sure, but it wasn't a crazy step up, and I'll always be thankful for that. I think that was the right thing for me. I experienced a crazy step up at the end of my career, and that didn't work well. Again, I'd give Coach McDonough credit. I think he knew how to coach an 800-meter runner.
Yeah. Ohio State had Big Ten champions, All-Americans before you got there and after. Who were the guys that you trained with?
The guys I trained with would be a really great guy from Mentor, Ohio, named Ken Simcoe, who qualified for the state meet several years in high school. Then later, my second year, I think third year, Mike Anderson came in from Dayton, Ohio, who was a good runner. He ran 147 flat or something like that. There was just a group of guys. I'd jump in with the 400-meter guys. Ulysses Cohen was an All-American 400-meter runner at Ohio State. I'd do a little bit of, not competing-wise, but as far as training, I would train with multiple guys. So those are the names that come to mind.
You had 3 Big Ten wins.
Yeah.
Oh, did you move up? Okay, dual meets too. How far were you guys going for dual meet? What else did you run?
Really, all I ran ever was the 4x4. I ran every time from freshman to senior year. And I ran the 1,500 meters once or twice in college, but I always ran 800. And looking back, that would be one of my biggest regrets. I'll always contend I should have been a 1,500-meter runner. In high school, in Columbus, there was a meet called the Central District Indoor Meet. And I went to that meet, and I hadn't trained. But in high school, at that Central District Indoor Meet, there was a really good kid from Westerville South named Mike Lacey, tremendous talent, good cross-country runner, good miler. And I knew who he was, but I didn't know anything about him. My point is, at 16 years old, I was 4:17 indoors, 8 laps. Yeah, that'd be right.
Yeah.
And I won. So looking back, I've shared that story with several people that I know and that I have a lot of knowledge about running. They said, yeah, you probably should have been a 1,500-meter guy.
Yeah. Wow.
Ifs and buts. My college track coach used to say, ifs and buts or fruits and nuts every day be like Christmas. That stuck with me.
You made it to nationals. When did you make the finals at nationals? University, NCAA.
I qualified, I think I qualified for nationals maybe 8 times if you consider indoors and outdoors together. Not always in the 800, sometimes in the 4x4, mostly in the 800. But you mentioned I finished first in the Big Ten 3 times. One of those 3 championships was a mile relay.
Ah, okay.
But I like to share with people, and this has been a lesson that's carried on, it's impacted my life today. I finished second in the Big Ten 5 times.
Wow.
That's not easy to do.
Yeah, that might be a record that nobody wants to remember. You look up. Wow.
But I always tell people when you finish second, you have a choice. Get up off the track and try to get better or quit. And I was determined to try to get better. So I didn't win the Big Ten in the 800 until my senior year. I won indoors and outdoors, which was crazy because my freshman year indoors, I finished second. And I thought, man, I got this. This college thing's good. But that's the beauty of track. There's a lot of lessons you can learn. And you spend a lot of time by yourself and have the chance to reflect and think and always be grateful for those experiences.
It's what happens on the day, for better or worse. How'd your body take that whole indoor, outdoor seasons now that instead of being a seasonal runner, you were running throughout the year now?
I was never injured. Never. And I give Coach McDonough credit for that. I don't think he overtrained us. I think my body adapted pretty well. The one thing I have thought about looking back is the great powers in running back in those days, many of them at least, especially on the West Coast, indoor season was a non-issue. They didn't run indoor track to speak of. And I think they peaked really well at the right time for outdoor seasons. My point being, it's hard to peak for indoors and then reset and do it again for the outdoor season. But you're young, you just do what you do.
The East Coast, yeah, the ACC is such a big thing for those universities, and so is the Big Ten. Those are giant school events and sometimes planning the team around. Okay. So what happened there at the end? Before you lost your coach, you were going to graduate, and what did you think was next for you for running?
I did graduate, miracle of all miracles, thankful for that. And I had been overseas running the summer after my senior year in college. I ran for an organization called Athletes in Action, Christian-based track organization. And I met this guy overseas by the name of Joe Douglas. And Joe Douglas was head of the Santa Monica Track Club. And he said, why don't you move out west? He said, I'd love to train you. And I did. And again, another chance for learning, but probably the biggest mistake I ever made as far as my running career.
Oh, why? Was the training different? Who was out in Santa Monica then? I was in the early 80s.
Yeah, every day I trained with Johnny Gray and David Mack and the guy from Texas named Charlie Taliaferro. And sometimes a guy named Gerald Masterson would come in and train with us. It just wasn't the right training for Scott Ryder. I actually digressed. And I remember a really good friend of mine, Stan Whitaker, who was an All-American at Kansas, came and visited me one time and he pulled my wife aside and said, what's going on with Scott? He doesn't look well. I had lost so much weight. He said he doesn't have that same leg speed he always had. And I think Joe's theory was, and I have no criticism to this, I needed to learn myself, but Joe's theory was if you're going to be a world-class runner, which I aspired to be, never was obviously, but if you're going to be, you got to do workouts at this certain level. I remember one day when I was running with the Santa Monica Track Club, we went to the junior college there in Santa Monica, and our workout was 2 things. We did a 400, and then we shuffle jogged, I call it, 400 meters, and we did a 600. So it was Johnny Gray, David Mack, Charlie Taliaferro, myself. Of the 4 guys, I finished 3rd behind David Mack and Johnny Gray in the 400. I think my time was 46 flat or something like that. But then we did the 500, and all I can remember is Coach saying afterwards, he said, man, you guys, that was pretty good. It's hand timed. It doesn't really mean anything, but you guys were less than a second off the world record in the 500. And we would go out and run 17, 18, 20 miles some days and at a fast pace. And I pushed myself, ran very respectable in workouts, but was just horrible in meets.
Yeah. So you'd like to win, competitive once you figured out the sport a bit. How was dealing with that and off ramping from competition then?
That's a great question. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that. I knew it was the right thing to do. And I have thought about this before. I've used this analogy. There are people that are known as beach bums, people that just kind of hang around and surf, and pretty soon they have gray hair and life has passed them by. You know what? And if they're happy, that's what matters. But I knew after running with those guys what it took to compete at that level. I'm just being straight up. I didn't think I was going to get to that level. And so I knew it was time to stop, start a career, have a family, own a house. Living in Los Angeles, we lived in apartments, and I wasn't raised that way in the Midwest. So my wife and I wanted to have a home and start a family. So it was the right time.
Running 146, running these workouts with Johnny, being able to train with Johnny Gray, it's a spectacular career. And I wanted to ask you about athletes in action. Who were some of the other people that were there when you were part of it?
Looking back, there are some amazing people. Joe Dial, a great pole vaulter. Innocent Egbunike, who was a multi-time Olympian, and I still stay in touch with Innocent. I've been in touch with Joe a little bit. The guy I mentioned earlier, Stan Whitaker. There's a guy named Joe Staub, a great shot putter from Nebraska. Robin Coleman was a great 800-meter runner from Texas. I could go on. There were some really talented athletes, and that was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Where all did you remember being interesting places to compete or get to see in Europe that summer?
Most of the places we went were in Scandinavia, Sweden, and Finland. And so I actually did that 2 summers. I did that the summer of my senior year and the next summer as well. And I do have some great memories. And as a rabbit, I ran in the DN Gallon Games in Stockholm. And that was Sidney Marie. And he was attempting to break the world record. And the meet promoter approached my coach and said, "Hey, would your guy be willing to do this?" And he said, and I don't care saying this today because I don't think I'm going to jail, but we were paid under the table.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to come after me, I'll give him my mailing address or whatever. But I was right on time with those splits. He did not break the world record, but what I remember is getting to the place where there's 300 meters left, and I cannot find this race. It's got to be somewhere out there. I've not been able to find it. And for a second, I thought to myself, man, I should just hang in there. I feel good. You know, I know you had Tom Byers on recently, my former Ohio State buddy. And he, of course, went out and led by a lot, but I was right there and feeling really good, but I stepped off the track. And I did get paid. That's really what I cared about.
Yeah.
That was a great experience. And then I remember running in Finland, and it was Joaquin Cruz, my buddy Gerald Masterson, and I ran 146 something there. So that was a pretty good day. But I was just blown away by these huge stadiums filled with people, a football type of environment like here in the States. It was a great experience. Always be grateful for that.
You have a trophy room, jerseys and medals and things?
It's interesting you say that, because when Kelly and I relocated, we lived our entire life in Columbus, Ohio, and we moved to South Carolina. It'll be 8 years ago in August. I thought, you know what, these things are just sitting around collecting dust. I never had them displayed ever. If you came to our house today, there's not one thing displayed. So I went through them and took pictures of everything, and probably 80% of them I threw away. I thought, you know what, I'm going to leave this to my kids someday when I die, and they're going to have to deal with it. But if I take you on a tour up in the attic today, I have some great trophies, and like the LA Times meet. I won the Knights of Columbus in Cleveland. I could go on about some of the indoor meets and all my All-American certificates, my Big Ten plaques. The past is in the past. I'm grateful for it. I don't want to cling to that. That's not who I am. That's part of who I am.
It's interesting how your self-awareness and your reflections on the transitions personally that you've gone through. And we all go through these passages of life growing up and things. How did this and these experiences, competition, success, track, then disappointing in time with Santa Monica in the end, inform and affect you as you face the big challenges that you had in life physically?
Well, I think I'll always contend that what track and field taught me was, one, to never quit. starting with that loss my junior year. And I know that sounds so trivial with all the things going on in the world, but it was pretty devastating. I also think that in business, it helped me tremendously. When I came back to Columbus, I started what you would have called in the beginning days, I was sold life insurance. Not an easy thing to do. And thankfully, over my career, I got more education and some certifications. And really, we became a full-fledged financial planning firm. And I'm so blessed in that way. But that's a tough business to get started. You can't quit. And I knew to have success, I couldn't quit. I learned that from tracking. And at age 47, I probably got the news of my life when I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. So I get emotional. You can hear my voice changing a little right now. But again, track and field taught me, hey, man, you got to meet this head on. I'm not going to beat it. Parkinson's doesn't work that way. It can't be beat. It's progressive, but I'm going to battle it. It's the same thing when I finished second in the Big Ten 5 times. I couldn't get across the line first, but I wasn't going to quit. And ultimately, I did finish first at least a couple of times. Other than my personal faith and my family, running has probably been the biggest influencer in my life.
And you mentioned the loss of your coach after graduation at Ohio State. How did that affect everybody? What do you remember about that in the team?
He actually passed away when we had moved to California. But I would tell you, I've had some really great conversations with my teammates. Rob Aller was one of my teammates, and Rob was a kid from Port Clinton, Ohio, who's been a sports writer for the Columbus Dispatch now for 30 years. And I saw Rob recently, and we were talking about that. And he said, you know what, the team was never the same after that. It wasn't as fun. It was just chaotic. It's kind of like a family losing a parent, a mother or father. One of the really influential people in our lives was gone. So it was not good for track and unfortunate. And obviously, most of all, it's not good for Coach McDonough's family. But I will tell you, I still stay in touch with Jimmy. His name is Jim McDonough. My coach's son is Jimmy. I just talked to Jimmy a couple of days ago. So there's still a connection.
Yeah, it's a big loss. I went to a little school in Western Pennsylvania, and Ed Fry, a very good runner, and coach, ended up starting the women's program at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. So he coached through the decades. And when he passed, what a reunion it was. People that same thing, the big loss to the community, and it can bring people together for a milestone. And there's a kind of a cool thing that happened before he passed. One of the guys who started YouTube went to IUP.
Oh, wow.
Had a closet full of computers, and he got out. And when he graduated, became a billionaire. IUP went after him, said, all right, come on, let's build a stadium and name it after him. He said, nope, I'll give you all the money you want. You name it after Ed Fry.
Oh, wow.
And he wasn't a great runner, but yeah, that's neat when those guys have that kind of.
Great story. That's very meaningful.
Yeah. It's a basketball arena, but it's needed big. So we go to the Ed Fry Arena every time where we have a Hall of Fame induction, things like that.
Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Johnstown, now hour and 40 minutes southeast of Pittsburgh.
Oh, Johnstown's PA, you're saying?
Johnstown, PA, yeah. Yeah.
What were your events?
I started in 9th grade, and I was a miler.
I should be interviewing you.
Yeah. No, this is very cool. You created a YouTube channel. What about that? What motivated you to want to publish?
And by the way, I need to do a much better job on getting new content into that YouTube channel. It's one of my goals after I get past my current little challenge. But when I was diagnosed with Parkinson's, I decided that I could either be a contributor or a consumer. And that may not make sense. But what I mean by that, I could be somebody that sits back, and I'm not being critical of this because some people are not cut out to be a contributor, that I could sit back and just quietly do my thing and reap the benefits of people who have done before me as far as knowledge and how to fight the battle against Parkinson's, or I could contribute. And I decided that I was best suited to contribute. So one of the things I created was a YouTube channel based on, I wear this on my wrist every day. It says IWMQ, I will never quit. And that's the theme of the YouTube channel, trying to find people that have gone through things in life and persevered. You know, I've interviewed Ryan Hall, the great Olympian, ran at Stanford. I've interviewed some cool people, and then I've just interviewed a lot of average people, and there's just stories and adventures. But it's tended to inspire people because, Matthew, what I've learned is that in life, my battle might be Parkinson's, but if you take the time to ask, everybody has a story. You just shared part of your story with me, which is really meaningful. And whether it's relationships, financial issues, health issues, employer issues, teacher student issues, everybody has a story and has challenges. So my goal is to help other people to grab onto that concept of no matter what happens in life, don't quit. Put your shoes back on, get up and go after it another time.
Yeah. There's a lot of words that we throw, like you say, not to be trite, but that's a pretty brave and also resilient attitude to have. It's inspiring. It's really why I wanted to talk to you beyond your elite career as a runner and the accomplishments there and your passing through. It's a fascinating story of your naive beginnings and yet success, and then overcoming that, not paying that much attention to importance of school young and having a great successful career battling all through this. Parkinson's is something that affects a lot of people. I work up the street. I'll be going later today to help a 90-some-year-old person with their phone and email, and I go there all the time to help people. There's several Parkinson's sufferers in that living. Do you want to explain a little bit what your take on what it is, and as much as you want to share, how it affects families?
Sure. First thing I think would be helpful, I can do this rather quickly, is for people to understand what is Parkinson's. In our brain, there's a place that creates dopamine. I always call it Niagara Falls, but it's down by the substantia nigra. And dopamine does two things. Dopamine gives you the ability to move. That's why Parkinson's is called a movement disorder. Dopamine also helps create our sense of well-being. So for some reason, that's not really clearly understood. People like me, my brain stopped producing any dopamine, or certainly not a sufficient amount of dopamine. So when I first sat down here, I was pretty calm. Now I'm due for medicine in 12 minutes. So that's my tremor right now in my right hand. I'll take medicine in a few minutes and that tremor will die down. Parkinson's disease is a lack of dopamine production. I think the other thing that's maybe misunderstood is how does it impact somebody's life? Most people think of it as a tremor. It goes far beyond that. It impacts your sense of well-being, impacts your eyesight, your dental care, your intestinal issues. The list is just long, long, long. And crazy, in the United States, somebody's diagnosed with Parkinson's every 6 minutes. And that's not going to slow down. What causes it? I'll tell you the answer to that in this way. If I was diagnosed with Parkinson's 50 years ago, the physicians would have prescribed a drug called carbidopa-levodopa.
L-Dopa.
Yeah, if I was diagnosed today, I'll be taking it in a few minutes, carbidopa-levodopa. So that tells you something. But there's plenty of people working to find a cure, but it's very complex, complicated. And I'd like to tell you that a cure or understanding of the disease is right around the corner. It's not. Having studied a lot, spoken to a lot of people, met a lot of people at the top of the research chain, so to speak, I'm pretty convinced that it's a result of two factors: environmental and to some degree genetic. And when I say environmental, we know there are things that are used in dry cleaning that cause Parkinson's. So that's a fact. That's not speculation. There are lots of sprays that are used in farming. You went out to California, there's a place called Parkinson's Alley, where the rate of Parkinson's per person is so incredibly high, especially among migrant workers from being around the stuff they spray on the food that we ultimately eat. It's complicated. It's growing. It's a huge drag on the economy. It's a huge drag on families. It impacts everybody in the family, not just the person with Parkinson's. Some days my spouse, Kelly, helps me get dressed. Buttoning is a challenge. Some days I do really good. There's sometimes if you saw me, you wouldn't even know I had Parkinson's. And that creates a whole set of issues. There's a lot to it, but there's a lot of people facing a lot of challenges in life and a lot of other diseases. Mine just happens to be Parkinson's.
It's inspiring. You are inspiring to talk to. I will, and I hope a lot of other people are going to remember the image, your bracelet, and I will never quit whenever they face any challenges. You've obviously got the resources and bandwidth. You speak well informed about Parkinson's, and you've decided the best way to face it is to understand it and get your mental and emotional resources out of it. It's a wonderful story in a kind of not so happy situation in terms of which challenge it is, but Yeah,
You're very
it's great.
kind.
It's great to talk to you, Scott. Is there anybody else you want to mention or any other stories that we should get in here?
Yeah, a couple things you might find interesting. In 1983, every year the United States has a dual track meet, the United States against England. The United States picked two runners in each specialty, pole vaulters, two long jumpers. 1983, I was chosen to be on the indoor team and made 100 meters along with my friend Gerald Masterson. I like to tell the story that first we flew into Milan, Italy, and I had a whale of a season in 1983, probably my best indoor season. There was something, or still is, called the Mobile Grand Prix.
Right.
And so I finished second in my area in the 800,000. Mark Belger, if you remember Mark Belger, the great Villanova runner, finished first. So I had earned my spot on this team. So we went first into Milan, Italy, and I won the meet there. And I thought, oh man, Ryder, you're on fire, man. Because I had won the LA Times meet that year. I'd won Louisville, Kansas City, Dallas. I can't remember all of them. And I was running the 1,000 and the 800. Not of the same meet. Some meets 1,000, some meets 800. But long story short, we next fly into Birmingham, England, and we get off the plane. We're going to run Cosford RAF, Royal Air Force Base, the indoor track. And before we get there, the coach pulls myself and Gerald Masterson in his room and he says, hey, you guys, I just want to give you a heads up that you're not just running against England's best runner tomorrow. Because if you're a pole vaulter, you might be competing against England's best pole vaulter or long jumper. That doesn't mean they were the best in the world. He said, you guys are running against Seb Coe and Peter Elliott. I said, oh my goodness. But you know what? It was all good. You could call this stupidity, but I had no expectations I was going to beat Sebastian Coe. It would have been a great story. But running against Seb Coe, who I've since had some communication with, was incredible. Peter Elliott goes down in history as one of the great runners. And I remember that race, we went through the first 400 pretty fast. And that race is on YouTube, by the way. You won't see me in it because they're focused on the winner. But we went through the first 400 like in 51, I think, indoors. And that was a 4-lap track for the 800. And I remember thinking to myself, Ryder, what are you doing? You're never going to finish this race, man. Again, by today's standards, that's nothing. But you know what? I hung on and I finished third out of 4. I ran 148 flat indoors, which was respectable in those days. Well, today it'd be nothing. Again, it's that lesson I learned. Don't quit after 400 because I could have pulled off the track and said my hamstring hurt or something. I would never do that. But there's plenty of reasons to quit. Not that many reasons to finish. But man, I'll always be grateful I did. And Seb Coe broke the world record in that race, by the way. So it's cool to be in that environment. I'll always be grateful for that opportunity.
Yeah, and to be in a race where a world record's broken, that is a quite pinnacle achievement. That's very cool. Interesting about those dual meets, of course, starting from the 60s, the U.S. and Russia dual meets. So there's 4 people on the track. Even at that elite level, you don't see too many of those anymore where there's 4 people on the track and they're all at that elite level. That's cool.
You're very exposed when you're out there. And if you listen to the guy calling the race, you'll recognize his voice because like he played that video of Byers in the race recently, the rabbit who got away or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's the same guy. But at one point he says, the Americans are finding it very difficult to keep up. And then another time later on in the race, he says, Peter Elliott battling with 2 very good Americans. I'm thinking, no, dude, we're not that good because we're not even in the picture. My son watched that video the first time he ever saw it, and he called me. My son actually ran track at Adams State in Alamosa, Colorado.
Wow.
You know, which is timely because Joe Vigil just passed away a few days ago, a legend.
Yeah.
But my son watched that and he called me and said, Dad, you ran about the dumbest race you could ever beat. It's kind of like your junior year in high school at the state meet. And if you watch that race, I continually try to pass Peter Elliott. He just very subtly scoots out in the lane, pushes me wider. It's one of those what ifs. Man, what if I just would have tucked in behind him? But I didn't. And it makes for a great story today.
Yeah, that's very seeing Peter Elliott up close and yeah. And you scored a point or 2 for the U.S. team, I think.
Yeah. You know, and I'll tell you what's amazing because of opportunities like that. Today, I've become friends with Frank O'Mara. I don't know if you remember the name Frank.
Right, of course.
Harrison. And Frank, like myself, has Parkinson's. And we've worked on several projects together. And I don't know if we're going to do it. We've talked about going over and seeing John Walker, the great New Zealand runner, because he has Parkinson's. And so those opportunities wouldn't exist had I not run. There's a whole nother community out there of people that had run that have Parkinson's.
Yeah. Wow.
We say Parkinson's is like a snowflake disease. Every snowflake's different and it's different for every person.
Yeah.
My voice is definitely muted compared to what it used to be, but I'm able to enunciate pretty well. We'd like to make a little documentary about going over and seeing John Walker. I think that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. How much of a fan of the sport were you after you turned it off after Santa Monica? Did you stay a fan of the sport?
I would say I would always be a fan, but for a few years after I stopped running, you wouldn't have known I was a fan by the way I lived my life. I just separated myself from it. I didn't really want to hear about it and think about it. I wanted to move on. But then later, I love it. I think it's the greatest sport in the world. It's an old sport. So many special people too. And I'm sure there are in many sports, but people in track and field world they're special. They're different in a good way.
Yeah, and you mentioned you had a pair of those shoes. I picked those shoes to say, okay, anybody that ran through the center of these, they didn't have them on their feet. They saw everybody else with them. These are my college grass cross country.
Yeah.
shoes.
We always call
Yeah.
them waffle shoes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had a pair that were blue with like a gray swoop.
Yeah.
I love those shoes. I did a lot of training in those shoes. I was going to share one last thing with you.
Excellent.
This is just more of an FYI, but 3 years ago, myself and a friend that has Parkinson, we raised $300,000. And the goal was to film a documentary. We called it Parkinson's Across America. So we took off in a van with a film crew, and we ended up traveling just shy of 8,000 miles to 19 different destinations, and we interviewed hundreds of people. Then our goal has been to create a documentary. So we're finally making some headway, and it'll be a 5-part documentary. We just finished the trailer. I'm going to send you the trailer after this. We finished the trailer, or the sizzle reel, they call it, last week. So we're going to start marketing it. And then it will be a 5-part cinematic documentary series. We're going to try to get somebody big to pick it up and donate all the money to the Parkinson's Foundation. So we'll see if it happens, but it's pretty cool. I just want you to know about it because you said you go to a facility where there's people with Parkinson's. You might want to share the trailer with them even. It's encouraging and inspiring.
Yeah, I will. I'll put it on through this podcast website so people can see that and keep up with it. They said it's very likely that many people are affected by it in some way through friends and family or themselves. Yeah.
And Matthew, here's what will happen as a result of you being kind enough to chat with me today. There will be multiple people reach out to me and say, hey, I have Parkinson's. My family member has Parkinson's. The last story is the Ohio State University Alumni Magazine did a short story a couple years ago. And I won't tell you the name now, but a guy that played at Ohio State, played in the NFL, played for the Browns, really great guy. Graduated a year before me. He reached out to me and said, Scott, I have Parkinson's. And that's opened up a whole nother world. So it's amazing who's going to hear this podcast. And yeah, the running's interesting, but the real life issue is a little more important probably.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for allowing me to chat with you.
I tell you what, personally, it's really uplifting and such a pleasure to spend time and get to know you a little bit, Scott. Thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, likewise.
How did you pick Buford?
In this neighborhood we live in, it follows a concept called new urbanism. Have you ever heard of new urbanism?
Yeah.
It's made to be a walking neighborhood. In Ohio, we'd always lived out in the country for the past 15 years. So I could get on my bicycle in Ohio and be out in the corn rows right away. But Southern Living has featured this neighborhood multiple times in their magazine. So Kelly had followed it from day one. And I was doing some speaking not far from here once. And I said, hey, if you go with me, I was going to Charleston, South Carolina. So you go with me. I said, would you go with me? She said, yeah, I will if you'll take me down to this neighborhood. And so we drove in and fell in love with it. And it's been a great decision. Lots of kind people and very different lifestyle, not all the speed up. And I think one day I timed this, going back to my track days, I ran 7 errands in 48 minutes. Post office, the dry cleaner, a UPS store, whatever. So it's been good. I miss Ohio. I miss the people in Ohio, friends and family, et cetera. But it's been good.
It's really nice to make a connection with you.
Ever down this way, you got a friend. Don't confuse it with North Carolina, because there's a place in North Carolina called Beaufort, spelled exactly the same way. In South Carolina, they call it Buford. Thanks.
Thanks. Bye. Hey, I hope you enjoyed another episode. Do you have someone you'd like to hear interviewed on the podcast? You can leave a comment on the YouTube channel or on the website, running70s.com. That's running70s.com. Let me know what you think of the episodes and anyone, including yourself, you'd like to hear interviewed. I hope you enjoyed another episode of Running in the 70s. Voices, stories, and memories of athletes who were running in the 70s. Until next time, wherever you are, keep looking forward and don't forget to look back.